Welcome, everyone. What if just two simple actions could accelerate your accreditation process and make it less stressful without sacrificing quality? That's exactly what we'll be sharing today. We'll be drawing on insights gained from over 2 decades of experience and hundreds of successful IAC accreditation submissions. My name is Katie Hill. I'm the clinical media moderator here at CardioServe. I'll be your facilitator for today's session. If you have questions as we go, feel free to drop them in the chat. Even if we don't get to them live, our team will follow up with answers. Let's start by taking a closer look at the IAC application process so we can lay the foundation for the strategies that we'll be sharing. Joining us today is Judith Buckland, the founder and president of CardioServe. Judith is a registered diagnostic cardiac sonographer, holds an MBA, and is a fellow of the American Society of Echocardiography. With over 30 years of experience in echocardiography and more than 18 years dedicated specifically to IAC accreditation, she brings a rare combination of clinical depth and regulatory expertise.
Thanks, Katie, for the introduction. You're right. We're going to first take a closer look at the IAC application. Just a brief look so that we can understand the two core concepts needed for these actionable items that will accelerate and simplify accreditation. The two core concepts is going to be one, case studies drive accreditation, both in speed and simplicity, and two, the need and understanding of embracing delayed status. So let's jump in to take a quick look at the IAC application so we can visualize and understand how the IAC's application format plays a role in these two concepts. So I'm going to say something that sounds obvious, but you cannot submit an application without case studies, right? Duh, no kidding. I say that because you can submit your accreditation without other items. So, for example, if your physicians or staff do not have all of their CMEs, you don't have to wait before you submit your application for the physicians to get their CMEs. You can simply click in the application and say, no, they don't have their CMEs yet. Quality improvement measures. You may be completing measures and everything's a disaster, everything's really bad, and you think, oh, I can't turn this in until my quality improvement measures look better. Not true. You can absolutely submit with quality improvement measures that you may initially be embarrassed about. You may have some quality improvement measures you haven't even completed yet. Like you want to do clinical correlation, but you're trying to figure out how to find which patients have had echoes and caths, and you haven't figured out the easiest way to do that yet. And so you're waiting and stalling until you implement things to get quality improvement measures running smoothly. Do not need to do that. Policies and procedures. Oh, I'm in a hospital and they have so much red tape and it's not approved yet, so we can't submit an application. Wrong. You can, but you don't have case studies and you cannot submit your application. So the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission's application, if you're unfamiliar with it, it looks like this. Along the left toolbar, you'll see either green check marks or yellow hazard signs. In order to submit your application, your entire application has to have a green check mark, meaning you have to have answered the question or met the measure. So some items like CMEs, for example, if a physician does not yet have those CMEs, just check no. And that counts as answering the question, and you'll get your little green check and can keep moving on. Now, there's some items that if you say no to, you will not get a green check. So for example, let's look at a policy that you need to have in place. If you look here, if you check yes, you have the policy implemented, green check, awesome. If you check no, yellow hazard sign, uh-oh, what do we do? This may be a policy that you've already agreed on, and essentially you're starting to implement, but you don't have a formal approved policy. Your policy and procedure method may have to go through multiple panels and approvals and before you have an officially approved protocol. So if you look here, instead of just saying no, if you provide an explanation as to why it's no. So waiting on approval from the advisory board, waiting for the medical director to approve and implement, and then move on, you'll see that you now get your check mark. You've said, no, I don't have it, but you provided an explanation. So that will allow you to get the green check mark so that your entire application is all green, ready to go, hit submit. Once you hit submit, it does not automatically submit that to IAC. Rather, it locks your application and then triggers you to upload your case studies. If you do not upload your case studies, your application will stay locked and will not push over to IAC, and you will not begin the review process. Just because you have all green check marks does not mean you're going to pass accreditation, because items are not compliant. Your physicians don't have CMEs. Your policies are not all in place. So why submit an application if you know you're not compliant?
Thank you, Judith, for that clear overview of how the IAC application is structured and how surprisingly flexible it can be in many areas. Let's quickly highlight the first key takeaway because it sets the foundation for everything else. You cannot submit your application without case studies. This cannot be overstated. Even though the IAC gives you flexibility on many items, the one thing you absolutely must have in order to proceed is your case studies. No case studies, no submission. So, even if you fast track your paperwork or complete everything else early, your application will not move forward until your facility gathers appropriate case studies to upload. Judith, you left us with a really important question. Why would a facility submit an application if they know they're not fully compliant? Can you walk us through what happens after submission and explain how this leads into the second core concept, strategically embracing a delayed status?
When you submit your application to IAC, it takes 60 to 90 days to review your application and render a decision. So if you go into this understanding, hey, doctors A, B, and C don't yet have their CMEs, while the application is under review, that buys them another 60 days to get their CMEs. Or, for example, a policy hasn't been finalized. That gives another 60 days to work on finalizing the policy before our decision is rendered. Understand that the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission is not a pass-fail organization, meaning if you are deficient in an area, when they render a decision, they will place you into a delayed status, not a fail, but a delayed status, and outline actions you have to take to rectify your deficiencies. We believe that by not having a pass-fail mentality and by having this delayed status pathway to accreditation, it allows people to not get caught in the perfection loop. You now have in black and white print this letter from the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission. The letter's not from your technical director, the manager, a consulting company. It's the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission that clearly identifies what steps have to be taken in order to rectify your delayed status. Why does that matter? What power does this letter hold? We have found it takes the pressure off the individual at the facility trying to push through accreditation because they have authoritative support from the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission by having this delayed status. It's not that a staff member, whether a physician non-compliant with CMEs or a sonographer who's non-compliant with a mandated scanning requirement, are trying to be difficult. But you can find yourself hitting a wall when it comes to compliance. A delayed status adds authority and urgency to compliance. So that's why we love delayed statuses.
Judith, you introduced a powerful mindset shift around something that might sound like a negative: delayed status. A delayed status is not a failure, but a strategic advantage. Here's what it might look like in practice. Instead of waiting until everything is perfect, you submit your application with case studies and a clear plan. While the IAC is reviewing your application for over 60 to 90 days, your team can finalize things like CMEs, policies, and documentation. When the delayed status letter arrives, you've already used that time wisely. You have the required materials ready to go. That's how you turn delayed status into a fast track for final approval. Now that we've covered the two core concepts, one, case studies drive accreditation, and two, delayed status can be used strategically, let's talk about how that should shift the way facilities approach accreditation.
Understanding the case study requirements becomes critical to your timeline. You have a cushion to obtain your best case studies because you're allowed to go back 12 months. Some of the challenges become you need to represent as many different physicians and technical staff as possible. If you are a facility with 17 doctors submitting 8 case studies, you can't duplicate a physician because this physicians you haven't yet represented. So the goal is to have the largest pool of compliant potential case studies to make selection easier at the end. Murphy's Law is every complete compliant study ends up being read by the same doctor or performed by the same sonographer. So now you cannot use the 2 or 3 brilliant studies you had planned on submitting. The larger the pool of potential case studies, the easier it is to pick and choose, mix and match your sonographers and physicians so that you can represent as many staff as possible. Understanding you need the largest pool possible of potential case studies makes the number one thing you need to do when you are getting ready for re-accreditation or first accreditation, and these are for the ultrasound imaging modalities of echo and vascular, is finalize a compliant scanning protocol. Take the IAC standards, go directly to the scanning requirements, do not pass go, do not collect $200, go directly to the scanning protocol requirements. IAC makes changes to the standards and guidelines. So download the latest standards, not the one that you have saved on your computer, but the latest guidelines and standards, and finalize a compliant scanning protocol before doing anything else. Nothing else matters. Compliant scanning protocol is the number one action that will shave months of your accreditation process.
How many case studies do we have to submit?
How many case studies do we submit? ECHO is based on the number of staff at your facility. So they count how many physicians interpret, how many sonographers perform, add that up, and based on that number, you will be told how many case studies to submit. The least amount of studies you will ever submit is 4, and the maximum from your primary location is 12. And with echo, they are split between native aortic stenosis and regional wall motion. For additional sites, you submit 1 additional abnormal. It can be either AS or wall motion, but just 1 additional abnormal per site. With vascular and nuclear, it doesn't matter how many staff members you have. It's not based on that. With vascular, it's 3 abnormal studies per testing area. So carotids, arterial, venous, visceral, 3 abnormal per testing area for your primary location. And for nuclear, it's 4 case studies, 1 normal, 3 abnormal, and represent both exercise and pharmacological stress tests.
Judith, let's highlight the number one action item from today's session because it's the foundation for everything. Finalize a compliant scanning protocol before doing anything else. Go directly to the scanning requirements in the latest IAC standards, not the version saved from your last submission. Here's why. Case studies drive accreditation. They must demonstrate specific pathology, be performed within the last 12 months, and represent every interpreting physician and sonographer. You can't duplicate staff until all have been included. By implementing a compliant protocol early, every scan performed moving forward becomes accreditation ready. It also gives you a broader, more flexible pool of case studies to choose from when you're ready to submit. Earlier, we mentioned that a delayed status can be a useful tool, but case studies are the one area where you really don't want to rely on it. Here's why.
The reason we focus so much on case studies, because the question can be, well, so what's the big deal? You said we can submit everything that's not perfect. Scanning protocol is not perfect. Who cares? At least we get to submit. Okay, you get to submit. But let's walk through that. When you submit a application that you are expecting delays on, you can prepare for it. If somebody has not read the latest guidelines and confirmed the scanning protocol requirements, they're not even going to be expecting the case studies to be kicked back, right? So that's number one, that caught off guard. Number two, when you have an administrative issue, a policy issue, a CME issue, the rectification steps involve sending copies of CMEs, a letter from the medical director, an updated policy, all paperwork, right? Easy to rectify. But if you have non-compliant case studies, the rectification action is submitting new case studies. You cannot control pathology. You have no control over patients with aortic stenosis walking through the door, right? So now if you get a delayed status rectification that includes case studies, you have not accelerated accreditation because the process of getting compliant studies takes a while.
Judith, that was a great breakdown. And it really reframed how facilities can think more strategically about the accreditation process. So here's what today's session boils down to. First, case studies are the driving force behind your accreditation timeline. That's why the critical first step is to finalize a compliant scanning protocol. This ensures every scan going forward is accreditation ready and gives you a strong pool of studies to choose from. Second, delayed status is not something to fear. It's a strategic tool. Rather than waiting for perfection, submit with a plan. Then use the review window wisely to close the gaps on items like CMEs or policy approvals. Together, these two strategies help you move through accreditation faster, with less stress, while still maintaining quality. Now, let's answer some of your questions. If you have a question, now is the perfect time to drop it in the chat. We'll start with a few of the pre-submitted questions while we check that chat.
Katie, go ahead. We can take some questions from the chat.
What do you do if the doctors don't read on time?
What to do when physicians don't read on time? First and foremost, have some grace. Understand that physicians are under a tremendous amount of pressure. We have physicians that may practice in multiple hospitals. They manage their own private practice, right? Don't assume that the doctor's just being difficult and stubborn, but rather that they are tapped out, maxed out with being pulled in so many directions, right? Secondly, in regards to your IAC accreditation application, you can submit an imperfect application. Your case studies, although preferred, that your final reports are on point and meet all the requirements and are read on time. If they are not, they're not. An IAC will provide the rectification steps needed. So that may be a letter from the medical director stating the plan to ensure that studies are read in a timely manner. And that plan may be as simple as anything we look at gets better. So we're going to keep tracking it. And based on our findings every quarter with the physicians, we're going to see if it gets better.
How long does it take to get accredited?
How long does it take? Great question. We've talked about accelerating and simplifying, but we haven't narrowed down an exact time frame. Our rule of thumb is however long it takes to get compliant case studies is how long it takes to submit your application. We follow our own advice that we gave here today. The first thing we do is implement a compliant scanning protocol. Once that's implemented, We start having sonographers log potential case studies. Then we begin looking through these potential case studies. We don't wait until we have this long list of potential case studies, because if by chance a sonographer misunderstood the compliant scanning protocol, you're going to have a whole bunch of studies that may show the same persistent error because it was just something that was not understood. As you get potential case studies, review them and look to see if there's any persistent issues that need to be corrected in order to ensure compliant case studies. That said, if having a compliant case study is one of your facility's personal hurdles, is one of your biggest challenges, you have sonographers that no matter what, you cannot get them to include all the required views. At that point, you want to use the decision letter from the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission as your support, your authority, your urgency in order for them to rectify their scanning deficiencies. If you've gathered your potential case studies, but there's one or two outliers, go ahead and submit. Let them know ahead of time, hey, most likely this is going to get kicked back because of X, Y, and Z. When you get your decision back in 60 to 90 days, take that letter to them and say, you are now holding up the accreditation process. We need a case study from you that's compliant. The shortest time we completed an accreditation process, we went in on a Friday, the sonographer stayed late, came back on Saturday and Sunday and worked with the sonographer and submitted on Monday. How did we do it in 4 days? Well, one, it was a reaccreditation. Two, no changes to the scanning protocol. So the requirements were the same. Three, the sonographer was amazing and always followed a compliant scanning protocol. Many facilities will dust off the PDOF probe when it's time for accreditation, and they're often not using it on a daily, weekly basis. But this sonographer was following the scanning protocol, which is the main challenge and hurdle. So how quick can you accredit a facility? Apparently, over 1 weekend. It was a small office, and we were able to complete QI measures for the entire quarter, select her 4 case studies, submit her application in 4 days. Is that realistic? No, it's not realistic, but the fun of the story is the fact that if you have compliant case studies, you can submit quickly. For a hospital, we give around 9 months, so 6 to 9 months, because there's so many moving parts. With a physician's practice, whether you have 2 or 15 doctors, all doctors work for the same institution, right? So the concept of standardizing is a lot easier than when you work in a hospital. Because think about it. If you go into a hospital, usually that radiology department is one company that the hospital uses for radiology. They are all working for the same company. But cardiologists, it's completely different. The physicians listed on the application, but don't always work for the hospital. They have their own practice they work for. So now standardizing can become a lot more challenging because you have physicians that are accustomed to doing things their way. And so it can be harder to get everybody on the same page because, it's not that physicians are being difficult. They're used to reading a certain way. They don't even think about it. Now the report template's getting changed and processes are changing. It's an extra layer of stress placed on the physicians. So it does take longer to accredit a hospital rather than a physician's practice. We usually set that 6 to 9 month time frame. And again, that's driven by case studies.
What free help is there?
In regards to available resources, absolutely embrace IAC's website. Absolutely use all of the free services available to you through the Intersocietal Accreditation Commission. Intersocietal.org, that's their website. They have so many free resources. accreditation checklists, sample policies, sample forms you can use. There's so much available. They have amazing staff that you can email, you can call, you can ask questions. They are genuinely there to help you. They're not the big bad wolf. They want to see you succeed, and they're not expecting perfection. Despite all the free services, some facilities still choose to use outside help. And we are honored to help facilities nationwide with their accreditation through our full service consulting or our software. But we also do provide free resources on our website.
We could probably spend another hour on questions, but unfortunately, we're out of time. If we didn't get to your question today, don't worry. Our team will follow up with you directly via email. Let's finish with a quick summary and a few ways you can move forward after today's session.
So to wrap this up, the 2 actionable steps that any facility can take in order to accelerate and simplify the accreditation process is: number 1, implement a compliant scanning protocol using the latest standards and guidelines. And number 2, submit your application. Don't wait for perfection. We can have an imperfect application and still submit and expect a delayed status and use the delayed status in our favor.
Thank you all for joining us today. We hope this session gave you a fresh perspective and practical strategies to accelerate and simplify accreditation by recognizing that case studies drive the timeline and that delayed status is a tool, not a setback. If you found today's session helpful, we encourage you to take the first step. Download the latest IAC standards and update your screening protocol.
Katie, thank you so much for moderating this session. You did a fantastic job. Appreciate it. For all of our attendees, thank you for attending our webinar. This is our first in our planned upcoming webinar series that will cover accreditation, echo, interesting case studies, vascular, nuclear, lots of fun stuff, with future webinars even offering Cat 1 AMA CMEs. We encourage you all to sign up for our newsletter so you can stay current with topics related to accreditation or the specific imaging modality you work within. And we look forward to seeing you again in future webinars. Thanks so much.
If you'd like help applying these strategies at your facility or addressing any challenges you're currently facing, schedule a free consultation by visiting our website at cardioserve.net or by clicking the link in the follow-up email you'll receive in the upcoming days. Whether you're preparing for your first accreditation or re-accrediting multiple labs, we're here to help. On behalf of all of us here at CardioServe, thank you again for your time and your commitment to quality. We look forward to supporting your accreditation journey.